Bill Stone, thank you for that awkward silence. I should have told you this before we started, but I let it run for 5 seconds so I can catch the noise print and remove anything in the background.
Yeah, scrub out the background.
Yes. But dude, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. I'm stoked. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I think back to when I first saw you. I feel like in the comedy community, it's like I feel like you see people around once or twice before you meet them. And for me, that's what happened at Water Street Tavern in Kent. And I saw you go up and I saw you do this joke. And I realized that you're empowered because you had a bit about farting. And to me, that's one of the things that I'm so self-conscious about like not only farting in general, but talking about farting in public.
I honestly don't remember that joke. It's that you must have caught me. It had to have been in November of last year.
Yeah,
because that was my 1-year anniversary is coming up on the 5th here, 5th of November.
Nice.
For doing comedy.
Are you going to get yourself flowers and chocolate?
No, I am going back up to Water Street though, and I'm going to make sure to do my first. Well, not my first show in November. My first show in November is actually going to be in Pittsburgh. But no, I already told the first Monday in November I'm going to be heading up to Water Street to celebrate my 1 year.
Well, congratulations, man.
Do you remember what the context of the joke was?
I don't. I can't. I was just so impressed with you. I'm like, wow, this guy can talk about farting in public.
Trust me, there's so many other things that I want to talk about that I bar myself from talking about at this point, because not so much about me, but it's about, I'm married, I have kids. So, my wife did lay down some ground rules a while back. It's like, let's not mention the children. And I have done jokes about my kids. I don't mention them by name.
Yeah.
But I have done jokes about it. And I've done jokes about my wife too. And she's cool with that. It's just there's some comedians out there, they have no qualms just saying, my wife so-and-so, my kid this name, my kid that name. And it's like, there'll be a time for that down the road, because I'll probably sit them down and discuss it. Like, I got a joke about you and I'm going to do it. Do you care? But until then, other than that, anything about myself, I'm pretty open about.
Yeah. So, and you and your wife, you've been together for
24 years.
A quarter of a century.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
More than half my life.
Wow.
Met her right after I turned 16. I met her, our first date was June 9th, 1995.
What do you make of that? I mean, think back to yourself in 95. Did you ever picture yourself saying that you would be with this person for 24 years?
Okay, with her, yeah. Okay, I know this sounds weird because I don't know if it sounds weird anymore because they always talk when we were younger. Oh, girls dream of getting married and having families, and guys dream of this and that. My biggest life goal when I was young wasn't to be famous or to be a sports star or anything like that. My biggest goal in life was to find somebody and to have a family. That's what I wanted, So when I was young, I wanted to find the right, because part of it's just not wanting to be alone. The other part of it's just, I grew up with a mom and a dad and a brother, and it's like, yeah, we had our bumps in the road and stuff like that, but we were a pretty strong family. And it's like, especially in a time when I was growing up where I saw other people, a lot of divorce, a lot of separation and stuff like that. But, and then the funny thing is, that I met my wife and, we started dating, and then we officially started going steady in like July 25th of 1995. And then from that point, it was just the two of us, and 24 years later, 3 kids, and I married into a family. She has a huge family and just a very, very strong family, very, which was very conducive, with what I had, even though I had this very small family, my mom, my dad, my brother, and my mom's parents, and that was it. And matter of fact, within the last 2 months, I've, at least on my side of the family, I've lost at least, 1/3 of my family. I lost my father 2 months ago, and I lost my grandfather last week. So it's like things. I used to joke when I was a kid that I could count my family on two hands. That doesn't mean I don't have like cousins and stuff like that. Most of them all are out of state, Georgia, Florida, stuff like that. So growing up here in Ohio, I had this very small family. I had like I said, mom, dad, brother, my grandmother, my grandfather on my mother's side, and then I had my grandfather's brother and his mother. So I knew my great grandmother. Hell, my oldest son, who's 21, he actually knew his great grandmother at one point.
What?
Yeah, she died a month or so shy of 100 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was my son's. So it was Nick, my son. So his grandmother would be my mother, and then his great grandmother would be her mother, and then his great grandmother was my grandfather's mother.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So at one point, my oldest son had three generations of grandparents.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's unbelievable.
And it was funny. I mean, I've had a lot of thought when it comes to life and death lately, and what can take when my dad died 2 months ago, it was a blood clot. He was 62 years old. He was working for Akron City Hospital as an electrician, and he was very much a lively person who never laid around or was lazy. Like when he wasn't working, he was working on something else at home. He was constantly doing something. He wasn't in the greatest shape, but he stayed busy. And other than not so healthy eating habits, he had his problems. From a medical sense, but so we didn't see it coming. Massive heart attack, and then he survives that, and then a week later he dies of a blood clot. And I'm like, wow, it's like you can survive one, but you can't survive the other. And then here's my grandfather, who, as of a couple of weeks ago, was doing yard work. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, he has a massive stroke. And then the doctors are like, there's nothing we can do. He's going to die. We could have put him on a feeding tube and stuff like that. And all that would have just done is prolong a very shitty existence. He while he was still cognitive, he refused all that and no DNR, and last week he passed. So I'm looking and I'm like, from a male standpoint, I was explaining to my son, I always looked at it as, life was like kind of like waiting in some big line for it's like being like a line at Cedar Point for an amusement park ride. You got all these people in front of you who are waiting to get to the end, and then you got where you are, which is somewhere in the middle. And then you have the people who are behind you, like your kids, and in future, eventually their kids, and so on and so forth. And then just that line moves slowly. Now, all of a sudden, for me, that line has took an amazing jump from where I was in the middle to where I'm now towards the front of the line. Even though I'm still the same age I was 2 months ago, I feel like so much of me has progressed in 2 months because of the loss of that family. Because I'm looking at stuff now, I'm like, anything can take you, no matter how healthy you are, no matter how unhealthy you are. My great grandmother, who I told you about, died a month less than 100 years old. She's still smoking, drank up to the very end. Doctor let her, go ahead, have your beers, have your cigarettes. And then there's people ask me, well, what if she didn't? How much longer do you think she would have went for? And I'm like, I don't know, but I think 99 is pretty amazing.
Unbelievable.
I
want to clap. Applaud. One of the things that you had said when you said that death can happen at any time, it makes me think of a quote by Seneca, a book that I read. Seneca is a Roman Stoic philosopher, and he wrote in the book titled Letters from a Stoic, he said that death does not take into account seniority, right? So it's not like at a job where they give seniority perks to people that have been there the longest. That's not what death does.
No, not at all.
And it makes me think of when I was in high school. the beginning of my senior year, there was a friend of mine who was shot in the head at 18 years old. And I thought to myself, we were supposed to graduate, right? And now I just connected my senior year, seniority, right? Doesn't matter. And we have this idea of these stages. We have this idea of these parts in the line.
Right.
That we're going to reach the end of the line to get to this ride. Whereas at any part of the line, the guy who works the ride could come up to you at any moment and said, the ride's no more.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. I've lost over 10 people that I've known since high school. So, you know, before I hit my 30s. I've lost friends from everything from cancer to drug overdose to murder, you name it. Suicide. I lost several friends to suicide when I was younger. And, you know, it's like, I guess what I was thinking when you're young, and I don't know if you ever thought this way, there was two recurring thoughts I always had to myself. One, I always found it fascinating when I was real young how everything, like, you know, like when you watch a TV show, you're watching like a sitcom, you're watching a family, or you're watching one in particular person and you're getting an in-depth look on their life. And when I was growing up, I'm like, wow, every day I wake up and I open my eyes and I see that my surroundings. Nobody else sees my surroundings, but I see my surroundings. And I walk around all day and I see what's going on with everybody else. And it's like, and at the end of the day, I close my eyes and it's like, it almost feels like somebody is watching me and I'm watching life, you know, through what they're watching. It's like, to me, when I was alone, how do I know that anything else outside of my area actually existed? And on top of that, I also thought that old age was almost like a given. Like, I'm expecting that I'm I'm 8 years old now, but someday I'm going to be 80. And to me, like 80 was kind of the benchmark. And then if you went past that, you were getting like, you know, extra time in, you know, because I'm thinking in averages, but I'm like, I didn't look at it as like between that where I am now to 80, anything could happen at that point. Like I would say to myself, well, I got all this time, you know, because I'm going to be around for this long. So I'm going to, you know, if I don't accomplish it now, I can accomplish it later. And then, you know, you quickly begin to realize as you get older that none of that time ahead of you to the next day, to the next moment is promised.
When I was selling insurance, one of the first things that they had me do was make cold calls. And that's, if you've ever made cold calls, it's like torture.
Oh, it is.
But I mean, I spent 6 months calling people. And I called this one woman that through my experience of talking to numerous people over the phone, I could tell that she was, one, a woman, and two, that she was older. And I called her and I said, hi, I wanted to give you a call. My name's Lewis Lee. I'm with ABC Company. And I want to see if I could do a better job with your car insurance by giving you a quote. And her answer was, I'm turning 80 years old next week. I don't think there's anything that you could do for me now that will beat what I have. And the thing that popped in my mind to tell her was, what I said to her was, you're turning 80? Congratulations. And that's what I think we should tell people instead of happy birthday. Happy birthday's fine. I mean, it's nice, right? But it's like, congratulations. And what I told this woman was, my goal is to make it to 80 years old. That's an achievement. We act like oh, this person, is retired, they're older, okay, grandma, we'll see you next, holiday or whatever. We just expect it. We expect that people are supposed to make it there.
Right.
But the reality is not everybody does.
At some point, every day is a holy shit moment. Like, wow, I made it to the next one. Let's see how far I can keep going with this. It's like when you take a rubber band and you stretch it as far as you possibly can. And then once you reach that point, you think, can I stretch this a little farther? And you do. You start to, and you stretch, and you stretch, and you stretch. And you're just waiting for any moment when that rubber band's going to snap and break. And you don't know. You could be like at 2 foot long, and that's when you start to stretch those extra inches out. And then next thing you know it, oh my God, look, I'm at 3 feet. How much longer is this going to go for? And then you hit 4 feet. I'm like, I bet I could get to 5. And then right before you hit 5, it snaps and things are over. But back at 2 feet, you never knew you were going to get that extra 2.5 feet out of there. That's what I believe it's like sometimes. You reach a certain point where you know that every little bit you get out of it is I guess a little bit of an extra blessing. I'm not too much. I'm as far as religion goes. I'm not. I don't really subscribe to any certain religion. I'm spiritual, but I have my own beliefs. And I would definitely like to believe that there's something after this, because I would definitely like to see my dad and my grandfather again, and anybody else. But that's a journey that I'm willing to wait to get to.
First, I want to say sorry for your loss, of both your father and your grandfather. But you spent time as a first responder, and you've had encounters with death before these recent tragedies. Can you share what it was like with your time as an EMT?
It was exciting and a bit crazy. And for me, I never had a problem with death. And I've seen it in many different forms. I've seen just somebody who just looked like they were asleep. I've seen dismemberment. I've seen a lot of different stuff. And from one point to the my first death was a dismemberment. It was a car accident, and we're talking like crushed skull, arm ripped off. All I could do is just look and go, look at that. It's like, so where we go next with this? And that's when my partner informed me, we don't actually, our company doesn't transport the dead. That's another company. And I'm like, he's like, just go over and question those other 2 that were in the accident. And I'm like, okay, it's as a matter of fact as it was to me. I'd had several more after that I tried. And that's not even the ones you find dead. There's the ones you were trying to save. I guess as an EMT, when I was younger, when you think of like paramedics, the fire department and everything, mm-hmm. You think when these people are called, I think some people get this mindset that, oh, everything's going to be okay. The ambulance is on its way. You've heard people say that, right? Everything's going to be okay. Ambulance is on its way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sadly to me, that's not true. I would have to say 90% of the people I went to who were in the process of dying, they're going to die. Just because most of the stuff that happens, you got to factor in whatever critical has happened at that moment. There's this time frame that you got to get to them in, and there's so many factors that lie between point A to point B. I'll go back to my father. So my father had a massive heart attack while he was working at City Hospital. Okay? He had a heart attack at the hospital. They performed CPR on him for 45 minutes. They resuscitated him 3 times. Now think about that. 45 minutes. 3 times they brought him back to life. And he survived it. Okay? The amount of trauma done to his body and his heart at that point was massive. But he survived. Now let me tell you this. He was at the end of his shift. He was getting ready to go home. The only reason that he was found was because a gentleman he worked with had came back to pick up his badge, and my dad was in the office and they were talking, and the guy came back around the corner and found my dad collapsed. Now, imagine if my dad would have left the hospital and been driving home. Or not only that, imagine if he'd made it home and he was at home, which at that point my mother would have been at the hospital because my mom also works at City Hospital as a food transporter. They worked opposite shifts. So as he would have been home, she would have been there. So tell me this, who would have found him if not him being at the hospital?
No one.
And would he have survived that day? No, he wouldn't have. So, with that being said, as a paramedic or an EMT working on an ambulance, when you are trying to perform CPR on a patient or doing any type of life-saving maneuvers, push an epi or pumping oxygen or hitting on that bag or anything like that, it's a fight. But unfortunately, sometimes it's just a fight you're going to lose, and you got to be at peace with that. You got to understand that you did everything you were sent there to do, and that's all there is. And every life you do save in between that point is like the best thing ever. Because I'll tell you, me and my partner, I think we only saved about the 2 years I did it. I think we only had about 2 saves on my rig, and those were the world, because those are 2 people who get to keep on existing because we were able to do that for them, and nothing ever bothered me when I was an EMT because all my interaction with people was in a 15-minute window frame. At least that's what I put in my mind. Imagine you and me meeting for 15 minutes at the worst moment of your life, and it's like I come in, 15 minutes later, you're admitted to the hospital, and I'm off again. I didn't get a time to build a relationship with you. I didn't find out about your kids or your wife or anything about you, and if you died, you died. I tried everything I could. If I hold on to that attachment, it's just going to drive you mad. What was taxing on me is when I worked as a nurse's aide at a hospital, because that's when you got a chance to actually get to know people. And I had a rougher time doing that for a few years than I ever did as an EMT, because one day you find that Mr. Johnson's gone, the guy you helped bathe, bring food to, met his family, heard his life stories, you made an emotional connection to that person. And even though, sometimes they just go away because they get better, and sometimes they pass. Either way, a little bit of you hurts because of that. In the good situations, you're happy for them, but a lot of times, you just find out somebody's gone, and you didn't actually do anything to physically try to save their life in that moment, other than make their life a little bit better and happier by taking care of them. So maybe in a way you're trying to save them. I don't know how people would feel on an emotional standpoint on that, but yeah, it is definitely rougher taking care of patients over the long term than it is being an EMT. Because you're going to see a lot of messed up stuff, but it only happens in flashes. It's like going to a horror movie and seeing one really quick gruesome scene and then it's over with. And then you go about your day. Yeah, in the moment it was like, but then after it's done, you find a way to put it out of your mind. At least I did. Some people, not always.
I saw you within 48 hours of your dad's heart attack. I saw you at the Funny Stop, and we had a conversation about it, and then you went on stage. What was the mindset like when it came to your stand-up within that time period?
Actually, the night my father died, I went on stage. And I did a few shows, and then I did one show where I actually told some dead dad jokes. Me and my dad was a very interesting man. He was a staunch conservative when I was growing up. Very, very Republican, uh, very, very conservative. Um,
Military background, right?
yeah, he was Air Force, and I watched. You probably hate me for saying this, but I would believe in a way I'm a little bit mildly racist because unfortunately, it's like my dad loved everybody, and he truly believed that you should give everybody an opportunity to prove who they are, no matter who they are. Um, you don't judge just on appearance, but that didn't stop him that when somebody of any background would cross him, that he would say something off colored and
Stereotypical.
yeah, and you'd be like, "Oh Jesus, why did you say that?" I based my moral compass off of you, and you're doing this shit. You're killing me, man. But no, it was. As he got older, a lot of those prejudices started to melt away. Like he was very against gay marriage and all that. He actually didn't have a problem with gay people. It was funny. He believed. I hate when people say that sometimes. It was funny, like something that really isn't funny, but they're like, it was funny that he said this, but it wasn't. He was like, I don't want people thinking when I tell them that I'm married, that there's now a question mark around that marriage. Oh, is he married to a man? Is he married to a woman? And I'm like, Dad, nobody's going around now just saying, oh, you're married. I wonder what that means. No, it's not going to happen just because you let, gays or anybody get married. It's not going to be like that. But I don't know what changed it for him. But one day he was like, we were talking about it. And he's like, I don't care anymore. He goes, I think everybody should have happiness. Because that's just the way I think it should be. And I'm like, well, thank you. Thank you for finally, I don't know what brought you. I think he atoned it to a gay waiter he had at a restaurant one time. Just a conversation, apparently, a dialogue that they had opened with each other. But somebody had changed his ideas on it, and it wasn't me or anybody else close to him. But I was glad that he was able to finally shed off some of those conceptions, those preconceptions. But no, my mindset that night, it's like I was glad my dad at least got to come see me do stand up once. But me and him always had a really dark sense of humor with each other. I mean, honest, dark sense of humor. Like last year, he had a stroke while he was working at the hospital. And the next day, he was a big fan of the character Deadpool from Marvel Comics. And that character is all about, dark humor. So I have a Deadpool costume. I hid it under my clothing, got into the hospital, ducked into the bathroom of his bedroom while he was asleep, put the full thing on, went over and shook him awake and said, hey, buddy, it's Deadpool here. Heard you wanted to meet me for your Make-A-Wish. And he thought it was hilarious. But that's how we were. And I knew that he wouldn't want me to not, do what I needed to do, And plus, I really needed it's like my family was there for me, obviously, and I couldn't have coped with everything if it wasn't for my wife and my kids and my mother and my in-laws and everybody who was there for me. But I've recently found this community, this comedy community, and these people who surround me like yourself. And I find a lot of good people in that community, and it's really a way to get away from, I guess, the parts of me that I don't show around everybody else and show those parts. Because there's just some people you're close to, you can't bring out that darkness. And releasing it out on a bunch of strangers, it's very therapeutic. And it's kind of the mind I was in. It was nice to go out and just dump myself out onto other people and watch them be entertained by it.
So during these past few months, you've lost a dad and a grandfather. Taking it another route, your mom has lost a husband and a father-in-law. And
Or
during,
her father.
oh, her father.
Her father.
Okay, so
I never knew my dad's family.
she's lost a husband and a dad. During that time, you've been doing comedy, and during that time, I've seen your mom several times watching comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, how does that point to the type of person that she is?
Well, my mom's always been unbelievably supportive of me, even since because, like I said, my dad was really conservative. My mom, for the most part, was really liberal. You know, my mom growing up was the pot smoker, you know, the troublemaker and stuff. My dad was the straight laced kid. You know, two different worlds meet, I guess. But growing up, you know, me and my mom always went to the rock concerts together. We always went out and partied and stuff. You know, she probably got me the drunkest I've ever, the second drunkest I've ever been in my entire life, and that was before I was 21. And I mean, we did crazy stuff, and I could always, you know, she wasn't just my mom; she was my friend, you know. And I know some people, you know, look at why would you put your kids in the friend zone? Sometimes it's good to have that, and but you know. Growing up, my dad was always, you know, he barely went out and did anything. You know, they like my parents would do stuff together, but like growing up, my dad didn't have friends. He didn't have people he went and hung out with. He either worked or he was at home. That was it. And, you know, and it's like me, you know, I have my things I do. I try to make that balance. I go to my kids' events. I go, you know, I do what I can. I take them. You know, I used to do a thing. It's gotten harder as they've gotten older now, but I used to when they were younger. Every year, I'd take each individual kid to do one separate thing with them, just like a day to them. You know, we're gonna have a day. Like me and my youngest son, we used to go to sporting events. Me and my middle son, we'd either go fishing or we'd go to the PGA Golf Tour when it would come to town. Me and my oldest son, we'd go to rock concerts together. You know, but I always because there's. How do I put this? Growing up, I don't know if you've ever felt this way when it comes to having a family, but I always looked and said, as a parent, I think our job is to take all the good and all the bad that came from your parents and to learn from the mistakes they made as parents, but then also take all the positives that they've done as parents and you build on those. So you try to be a better parent than your parent was and let it grow exponentially. So my goal for my kids is to see what I've done that you believe has bettered your life. Look at all the mistakes I've made as a parent and learn from them. And I want you to go forth and I want you to be a better father than I am. I never want to think that, you know, I don't, you know, I don't ever want to say, you know, I was bad because, you know, I've done everything I possibly could, but I know I've made mistakes as a parent. I think any parent who's a parent can't be ignorant enough to think that they haven't made mistakes because being a parent is tough, you know, but doing your best to help instill those lessons into them and having them look back. Like the biggest thing I got, you know, from my dad is, you know, as amazing as he was, there were things that I would have fixed. And I've made it a goal to do those with my sons. You know, the things that he didn't do, I do with them. But I'd like to them to just carry it forth. You know, correct my mistakes, be a better dad than I was. You know, but my mom was always super supportive, and she is to this day. You know, I love when she comes and watches my comedy, and she's also really taken to the community around. You know, and the people who she enjoys a lot of you. And I know she likes you, Ray Roberts. She's a big fan of Ray's, some others. But
that's awesome. When I think of your personality, I feel and I see a lot of ambition. But at the same time, although you're an ambitious person, you have this way about you that moves very seamlessly, and there's not a lot of tension in the sense of when I see this could be just like a younger generation of comedians that we both know, but it seems like there's a lot of forcing in the sense of like what they're doing on this path, on this journey. There's a level of anxiety, if you will, of trying to make it to the next step or whatever that step may be. I'm not saying from the Funny Stop to a Netflix special.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying to that next, whatever that next step may be. It feels like comics like myself. There's kind of like this edginess to it that is uneasy. But for you, it seems, and obviously I could be wrong, the internal state might be different. There's a little bit more grace to how you're moving. Do you attest that to something that you said earlier in the conversation about how your main goal has always been this establishment of finding someone, a life partner, and establishing a family? Do you attest your gracefulness to already having that foundation?
I mean, first of all, thank you for saying I have gracefulness. I never really thought of it that way. Yes, first of all, I would definitely say that having somebody who supports your goals is always an amazing thing. Having Krista behind me, my wife, believing, and it's funny because I joke about the fact that she almost never, I think she's seen 3 shows in the entire year I've done this so far. And it's not because, she doesn't, okay, let's be honest. She's not a huge comedy person, I can't, very rarely can I put comedy on at home and she'll want to actually watch it. Very rarely do I find a comic that she likes. The last comic that I found that she really likes, I turned her on to Jim Jeffries. I think honestly most of that was because he has an Australian accent. She loves the accents, but plus he talked on a level of things that she believed in. We both love his gun control bit, if you've ever heard it. If you get a chance, listen to Jim Jeffries' bit on gun control. Apparently, at one point, it was so big they were teaching it at Harvard and stuff like that. Or Yale or someplace, some Ivy League school. There were big debates on it and stuff. But it's a great bit. But he talks also about the fact that it became so popular that everywhere he went, people would hound him about that bit. And it's like, yeah, that was good. Let's get away from that and do something else now. But no, and honestly, I'm 40 years old. I walk around and 80% of the comics around right now that I deal with are in their 20s to 30s. Very seldom do I meet a comic who's older than me, but there are. And I just feel like I'm late to the game. But what I do bring to the table is life experience. I have a lot to tap into, a lot of things that have happened to me in my lifetime. You work 34 different jobs in your lifetime. You're going to do a lot of different stuff. You're going to meet a lot of different people. But as much as I am sort of competitive, the way I see it is I set goals for myself, but I don't set time limits for those goals. I feel like they have to happen naturally. My first goal in comedy was to get on stage, and I did that at the Water Street. My next goal from that was to eventually move on from there and try another location. Then I did the Funny Stop. After I started doing different locations and stuff like that, when I got into the Funny Stop, I realized it was an amateur competition, which I didn't realize at first. And then the first amateur competition I did, I made it to the finals. And then in the finals, I made it to the top 8 and I got a hosting spot. All right. And before that time, I actually was running my own show out of Barberton, which kind of fell into my lap. It's funny, I really didn't think hosting my own comedy show was a big deal because all I was doing was getting up, cracking some jokes, and then introducing the next person, you know, to me, I've always felt uncomfortable in front of crowds and people and doing stuff like that. So it wasn't, to me, that actually wasn't a big deal. Now, doing my first hosting spot at the Funny Stop, that was kind of important to me because it's a comedy club, you know, and I know some people like to rag on bar shows and stuff like that. I think every show has its own challenge and stuff. I don't think they should be dismissed from one to another. But I do find that working at comedy clubs, it helps a little bit more because here's the thing: every bar show I've ever done, you're going to have the handful of people who do show up because they know there's going to be comedy there. But then there's going to be a vast majority of people who are going to be like, "Well, there's comedy tonight? I didn't know this was going on. I just came in to have a beer and get some pub snacks," you know?
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people you're trying to draw them into your side, get them to pay attention. I just did a show recently. The establishment was packed to the tooth. I mean, holy crap. It was filled to the gills. But I would say 60% of those people weren't there for the show. And I saw several comics that one literally a few minutes in gave up on his act because he couldn't talk over the crowd. And that can be difficult. So what I like about comedy clubs is you know that when a person walks through that door, they have come to a comedy club, which means they have come to see comedy. Which also, in a way, I find hilarious sometimes when you don't get reactions like you want because it's like you just paid money to come and laugh.
Yeah.
You know, at least snicker.
Yeah, right.
Or, you know, don't. But I'll be honest, there's been a lot of comedy I've watched in my lifetime that I found hilarious that I never laughed physically once for.
Huh.
I mean, have you not ever been at home watching like a Netflix comedy special or something and enjoyed it immensely, but you weren't belly laughing out loud in your own house?
For sure.
Yeah, I can feel that way at a comedy show sometimes. I could just sit in the back and be quiet and be like, "Oh, this is great," you know. But I'm not. Now, sometimes there's a joke that comes along that just makes you burst into laughter.
Yeah.
But I do feel bad. I do have the mindset sometimes when I'm on stage and I see people and I don't see them physically laughing. You know, I still think they're possibly enjoying the show because they're not booing. They're not, you know, physically upset by it. But, you know, getting back to what you said, gracefulness, I guess it's just all about, you know, I've been trying to make certain goals and certain goals have been happening for me, some a lot sooner than I expected. And I'm very grateful for them, but I'm not going to get all big-headed and be like, well, if this is happening now, then I should definitely be a feature, you know, in the next few months. And I guarantee I'll be a headliner by next year. You know, no, I don't think like that because I have seen too many comics right now who've been doing it 2, 4, 6, 10 years. And they're just getting to that feature headliner spot, you know, if that.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just tells me it's definitely something you got to work at, you know, because I could possibly do, I've done several 20-minute sets. I've never done a half an hour. I bet I could do a half an hour. Is it going to be a good half an hour? Probably not. But you never know. I might get lucky. But that's what I'm saying. I'm not afraid to attempt it.
Yeah.
I know I could fill the space. But can I say that I'm that type of comic at this point? No. No, I'm not. But I'm going to grow to it, you know?
Yeah.
Right now I have a 5-year goal. I know that sounds funny. You know, a lot of people say, I have a 5-year plan. My 5-year plan just exists around the fact that my youngest son is 5 years away from being 18. And once he's 18, I'll be more comfortable with going and traveling as a comic and trying to set those goals of going out west or, you know, and me and the missus could say, hey, we're going to go take a weekend in California and I'm going to go do some shows, see where I could get booked at. And, you know, because he'll be a man at that point who's legally going to have to self-sustain himself, you know, but until then, my priority is around my family. So right now I'm prioritizing my comedy around my family and not the other way around.
I haven't been doing comedy much longer than you have. It will be 2 years this upcoming February. But nonetheless, I find myself just breaking the seal kind of sort of with a co-feature, right? With Pete's co-feature competition.
Which, by the way, your next night is Halloween, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be hosting that show.
Well, that's what I wanted to bring up because the first round that I was a part of, you were the host. And while you were up on stage, I was having a conversation with Pete, and he said that you've been doing such a great job as a host. And to me, it really connected because before that comment, before that evening, when I realized that you were the host and Brett Thomas was the co-feature alongside of me, and Bill Squire was the headliner, I looked at that lineup and I said, this couldn't be more perfect. I was so excited to be a part of that and to contribute to that. So when Pete had mentioned that you had been doing hosting before and he thought you've been doing a great job, it kind of solidified what I felt. What do you make of that?
Well, that goes along with the part I was saying about I've reached some goals sooner than I expected. Like up until my first weekend hosting for Pete was, I think, back in August, and that's when he had me host for headliner Brett Terhune from Indianapolis, along with his feature Manilano Martin. That's it right here, which was it was a whole weekend. It wasn't a one night shot. He's like, I'm going to give you the whole weekend to host. Wait, I think it was September. Either way, it was like before that, my entire goal was to get a guest spot on a feature night. I didn't care who the feature was. I just wanted to get a guest spot, because I wanted to perform for a headliner crowd, because before that, it's like you're doing amateur night, so you're going to have your bulk of comics who show up, and then you're going to have, your people who trickle in on a Wednesday night. But when you have a headliner crowd, you have people who paid to come see that headliner, So not only that, but you kind of want to make sure your game's up because these are people who have paid more money than a regular show to see somebody they recognize. And the first one I did was for Mark Price, the guy who played Skippy on Family Ties. And I was stoked to do that show because, get a spot on that show. Because,
I was there that night.
Yeah.
And Jason Molinaturno.
Oh, Jason Molinaturno.
Was the feature. Was he?
Yeah, I think so. And that was a great night.
Yeah.
But that at that point, that was my main goal. Just to get a guest spot. That's it. Of course I have other goals down the line, but for that, reaching that goal at that point, I was like, checkmate. I did this. Now it's time to set my next goal, but I haven't thought in any way of what that next goal would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pete comes up to me and he goes, you've been doing good. I goes, I want to, he mentioned having me host. But he said probably next year. And I'm like, that's awesome. Next goal set. Next year, hosting a show for a headliner. Awesome. And then he comes to me, just a little while later, he goes, I want you to host for Brett Terhune. He's going to be here these 3 days. You're going to be hosting for him. And I'm like, holy shit. What was next year's goal is now coming to me now, And, I better make sure that I'm kind of good at memorization. Like, I took public speaking in college and I only took it because I was always good at that kind of stuff. But I'd really gotten down how to kind of quickly memorize things. So one of the things I always noticed with hosts at the Funny Stop is Pete will fire off at you real quick. I want you to say this, this, and this. I want you to say, this person's going to be here this week. And then this. It's just not, he won't just push the show for that week and the next week. He'll push a damn month's lineup on you and want you to rattle it all off on stage. Yeah. So 90% of the people I see up there have their notepad. So, and my goal is like, I'm going to know every single name. I'm going to know how to pronounce it. I'm going to know who's up, what dates. And I got up there and I'm like, hey, everybody, coming up this week, we'll have so-and-so, da-da-da-da. And I just went boom, 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 down the line. Made sure I had the feature's name right. Made sure I had the headliner's name right. Everybody's just rolling. And Pete was like, and that's one of the things that impressed him is because, it's just, I wanted to try to look as professional up there as possible, And from that has spawned more hosting spots. Next month I'm going to be hosting for Gemini. He's a ventriloquist magician who's coming in for the 14th, 15th, and 16th of November. I believe he's going to have me do Mary Santora on Valentine's weekend in February.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm like I said, my next goal from this point is to become feature worthy. And it's going to take a lot of work, and I don't know how long it's going to take to get to that point. But that's my next goal. And like I said, I don't set time frames to it because it can happen. Like I said, once I realized that certain things were jumping, I'm like, I'm just going to work and I'm going to let them come to me. I'm going to just do my best to prove my worthiness of it. I'm not going to force the issue, And I really definitely realized that I can't sit here and be competitive with every single comic who comes across, because every day I look on Facebook or anywhere else and I see this person's doing this show and they're doing this and they're doing that. And if I find myself being concerned with what everybody else is doing, I'm going to drive myself nuts.
Oh my goodness.
I can just only be concerned with what I'm doing. Doesn't mean I don't support my fellow comics. And that's the other big thing that I've been trying to do since I started this. I meet a lot of great people like yourself, and all I can really do is support the things you do and be happy for everybody, because I believe as soon as you start feeling any kind of jealousy or spite towards anybody else, you could just let it consume you, and it'll wreck what you're doing. Because now you're spending more time focusing on what everybody else is doing, and not enough time, focusing on what you're supposed to be doing. I would have to say, and I don't know if you'll listen to this or not, but the person who has been, and I'll probably hate me for saying this, the most supportive is Ray Roberts. I have gotten a lot of great knowledge out of him, and a lot of great information and support, and he's amazing for that. And I think sometimes his demeanor, personality would, act to the point of like, I don't feel like people know this, but
It's all smoke and mirrors.
it is. You're a big sweetheart, Ray. I'm probably not me for that.
From a distance, I have recognized a relationship between you and Pete that has developed so quickly. And being that you're approaching a year, I would imagine that you had perceptions of Pete before you got to know each other.
I had things I heard about Pete.
Okay, so I would like to understand how your perception has evolved from what you heard to now being tightly integrated with the Funny Stop.
I would have to say nothing's really honestly changed about it, because I still see the perceptions that people had of him come out in ways, but my relationship with him is a lot different than what I thought it was going to be. Because, I was told, right off the bat, hey, if Pete messes with you, if he gives you a hard time, that just means he likes you. And I said jokingly, the first time I met Pete, we sat at the bar together and we chatted, and he was showing me pictures of his kid, playing football for Akron U, and just being the nicest guy. And I went back to my friend and I said, I don't think he likes me because he's way too nice to me. I go, what did I do wrong? But no, part of it, I think, is an age thing, because of how old I am and because of how I carry myself. I'm more to his level as when it comes to, we're both fathers, we're both older people, and we, I don't have this forced outlook on everything. I do have a hunger for what I want, but, it's funny. Pete preaches a lot about loyalty when it comes to, comedy in his club and stuff like that. And he's had a lot of pushback from people lately about the stuff they're doing. I do other shows. I do stuff outside of the Funny Stop, but the best that and it's funny because I don't want people thinking that when I'm there all the time, I'm doing it because I'm trying to stay in his favor to get the things out of him that I'm getting. I truly like his establishment, and I really like him as a person. And he has been nice enough to me to give me opportunities that I could only repay him back by doing things in kind for him. That's the type of person I am. If you yourself give me an opportunity and do something as a kindness to me, I'm only going to try to find a way to reciprocate back to you. Pete gives me a hosting spot. I'm eternally grateful. Pete ends up going to the hospital to get some surgery. He asked if I could come in and help his wife, with the show. To me, that's a great opportunity to help somebody who just gave me an opportunity that he didn't have to give me at all. He didn't have to give me a hosting spot. He hasn't had to give me any of the opportunities he's given me, but he has. And because I do believe that some people could look at it as like, well, you're just kissing his ass because you're getting stuff out of him. Well, I find it another way around. I find that he's giving me opportunities, and what I can do for him in turn, I can help him out when I can help him out. And plus it all works out because I'm still in the comedy environment. So it's like when I'm there, I'm still involved one way or another. I'm still learning. I'm still taking in, so it all works out for me. And I still find time. And then it's like, I could sit there and tell him, oh, I'm going to go do a show at this place. I'm going to go do a show at that place. I don't get pushback from him, because I think he realizes that I'm being helpful, and loyal to his establishment still, but I'm still trying to grow as a comedian. And sometimes I do think it's a little unfounded when he gets, frustrated with what other people are doing, because people are just trying to get opportunities,
Yeah.
And I do think sometimes it's a little unfair that he would tell a comic he can't come back and perform here because he's running shows at this place, or, everybody has to find a point when they say, hey, I have an opportunity here and I think I need to take it.
Yeah.
Because it's not fair to yourself if you're always just rooting in one place and going and spinning your wheels and going nowhere. I don't feel like I'm going nowhere with what I'm doing with the funny stuff. So I'm content in doing what I'm doing right now, and I'm going to continue to do it because it's a good relationship, and I'm happy with what I'm doing right now. But yeah, it's to me, it's and in all honesty, sometimes I feel like I see you see it in comedy. Sometimes you see jealousy. You see people who get threatened by other people by what they're getting. It's like, why are they getting this opportunity now when I didn't get that opportunity then, or I'm just now getting that opportunity? And then there's other people who are actually happy for you.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel. It's like, just be happy for somebody.
Yeah.
Because it's that point when you can, like I said, when you concern yourself too much with other people's going-ons, you're just taking time away from yourself. Time is a precious thing. We've talked about that earlier. Time is precious. Take as much of it for yourself as you possibly can.
Yeah. Well, Bill, thank you so much, man. Speaking of time, I've already taken an hour of yours. I feel like there's a lot packed in here, a lot of great information that I'm so grateful that you were taking time out of your day to share it with us all.
Oh, no problem.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
The only thing I think more so I wanted to talk with you about, because I wanted to see your point on it, and it gets into the realm of joke writing. Because you're one of these people, you said you've been doing it for about 2 years now. How much has your act changed from the time you started to now?
I feel like a lot of people that watch me would say it hasn't changed much, but that's just because my ego believes that people are paying attention to every bit that I do, which is not the case. It's changed in the sense of I've put more parameters around myself. And the way I look at it is, when I started out, I wanted to have no guardrails, and I wanted to be able to say whatever I wanted to say. I have since put the guardrails around what I bring to the stage, not so much what I write down, because I believe in you need options, you need variables, you need variety. So when I write, if someone were to open up my laptop and see what I wrote, they would probably say, we need to arrest this person immediately because he is a threat and a danger to society.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take that on stage. I whittle it down, I carve it down, and what I bring to stage really is 60% what I know and 40% what I don't know. And the only reason why it's not 50-50 is because I use that 10% to buffer me, to give me a shield, something to hide behind while I can slip something new in to see if it works or not. And one of the things that Chris Harvey taught me, and I brought this up on the podcast numerous times, is that one of the things that he said to me was, you can't start out with a story. You have to earn the audience's attention to allow you to bring them on a ride. And the way to do that is you start off with something quick hitting jokes that that work. So snappy, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
So you get them on their side, then you go into your longer bits.
Kind of like giving them a trail of breadcrumbs before you give them the whole sandwich.
Exactly, because you kind of earn that credibility to say, okay, well, this guy was funny a little bit. Where is he going with this? And I think that goes beyond that. It's great advice when it comes to length of bits. But I think it also is important to understand where you're placing all of your bits. Because you might have a bit that could be potentially offensive or derogatory. But if you place that bit in a place where you lack credibility, it changes how the audience is going to react to it. So, with me, for example, I do material that involves race. And at this point in time in history, for whatever reason, that's a sensitive topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, if there's a black person in the front row, I always get on stage. I did this before. I do it less now because of this lesson. I always come up and I look at a black person, I say, my only job right now is to make sure that you laugh. Because if you don't laugh, all the white people behind you don't feel like they have permission to laugh. So my only job is to make you laugh. I don't say that now, but the way I position my jokes expresses that.
Right.
In the sense of, I have to earn credibility here. So that way, when I do get down to these racial parts, they know where I'm coming from. Because if I start up front with it, I don't know what this guy's about. Not only do I not know what this guy's about, I don't know where this is going. And because of that, I'm going to be reserved.
Mm-hmm. Like, I've wanted to do jokes that deal with race. I've written some in the past. But my thing is, when it comes to race and racism, I don't know why I'm long pausing. I guess it's the right wording, because I'm not, and I always love when people are like, I'm not racist. Like, I don't honestly believe anybody aspires. I mean, not okay. There are people, but I don't believe your average person tries to be racist. I believe that at any point somebody could inadvertently say something that would offend somebody else and come off the wrong way. But like one of my favorite directors of all times, Mel Brooks. He always found in satire a way to thumb his nose at racism. You know, Blazing Saddles, perfect example. Have you ever seen the movie Blazing Saddles? Oh, it's about a small little town out west that they want to build the railroad through. So they decide, how could we run these people out of town? And the way they think of, hey, the way we're going to do this is, well, the town asked for a new sheriff. We're going to give the town a black sheriff. That will offend them enough that they'll leave town. And then, of course, the sheriff ends up winning the hearts of the townspeople. And but the whole thing with Mel Brooks is, you know, him being Jewish and, you know, and everything. He always found a great way to thumb his nose at the establishment and at racism and stuff like that, and what people saw as racist constructs. And now, honestly, if you made that, if you watch a movie and you look at it, you couldn't make that movie now, because you have a lot of words and phrases and terms that are used in that movie that people would just lose their mind about now, you know. But I'm one of those cautious people that, because I know the jokes that I've written, I'm definitely giving the finger to you know, to racism, to, you know, the ideas of those constructs, but I never want to say them and then be taken in a different context, so I leave them out. And there's some, like, I just thought of one today while I was sitting at breakfast. I was thumbing on my phone, and you ever see those online where they're like, here's 20 pictures from the 1900s of Halloween costumes that look terrifying, and like half of these pictures from the 1920s are people dressed as like ghosts, but every single one of these ghost costumes looks really close to being like a Klan outfit, but they're honest to God Halloween costumes. And I made the joke, I'm like, I wonder if back in 1865 when the Klan founded, that it wasn't really in December, that it was on October 31st when a bunch of guys from Tennessee got together for a Halloween party, and they just all happened to be racist. You know, they all showed up dressed as ghosts and were like, I think we got something going here. I'm having a Christmas party on the 24th. Let's reconvene. You know,
That's funny.
But something like that, and it's like you could get where I'm going with it, but I'm always afraid that there's people who are going to take it out of context. You know. And so I find myself avoiding that type of joke. And then I wrote a joke a while back, and I did do it once, and I got a good reaction. But like, I've always been really socially aware, and you know that there's certain things you say and phrases in your life where you're like, why do I say it? Why do we call it this? Like, I'm at Subway, okay, and there's only so many types of cheese you can get on your sandwich. There's the shredded cheese. There's provolone, okay? And then there's, I think, cheddar. And then the last one is American cheese, but it's white American cheese. Not your regular slices of American cheese. It says on the menu, white American. And I say, why is it every time I order white American on my sandwich that if the kid making it is black, I have to look around first and be like, can I get the white American?
Yeah, right.
It's like, why couldn't it just be American cheese?
Yeah.
You know, like, why do I go to Chipotle and feel uncomfortable about ordering the black beans? You know, but it's stuff like that, and I don't know how people are going to take it. You know, because I do see so many people get up on stage and they'll just say whatever they want and not give a crap about what the crowd thinks.
Yeah.
And I will say that there's honestly times where I'm just holding back. Mm-hmm. Because at no point at this point in time do I want to be pigeonholed and like, oh, he does this type of humor. Yeah. You know, when it comes to, you know, race and stuff like that. And because I think there are definitely great examples to where you can thumb your nose at that establishment and show them it's like your silly constructs of how you feel about people, mm-hmm. whether what race or religion or orientation they have is ridiculous. Yeah. And there's no reason that we should think of people like that. Mm. You know, people should be always, like I've said before, and it's the way my father taught me, when you meet somebody, let that person, no matter who they are or what they are, let them show you the type of person they are inside first. Let them show you, let them show you they're a good person. And then if they show you that, that's how you treat that person. You know, if somebody shows you they're an asshole, well, unfortunately they're an asshole. You know?
Yeah.
But that's just the thing. You don't make that judgment. You give that person the opportunity, you know? No matter how scary it could be to yourself, how unsure that first reaction is going to be, it's better to have that opportunity with that person than to have never had it at all. And that's how I feel. So I'm gonna push forward with wherever I go, and I'm gonna shake hands and open arms to whoever I can.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if that relationship goes south, well, then I don't have to make a big deal about it. And it was never meant to be. But I found that in doing so in my lifetime, I brought a lot of good people into my life that I call friend. So I think things it's way better dealing with it that way.
Bill Stone, everyone, preaching. Thank you so much, man. We'll have to do this again.
Yes, we will.
Or should we fist pimp or
fist bump shake?
Thank you.